This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Evan Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with the entire show available on demand on our YouTube channel today. Well, we're going to look at road rage again in a little while after another savage attack this weekend, this time with an axe. We'll also look first up at splits within the major trade union federation here in South Africa. We'll get an update from the Arms Deal Commission that's ongoing in Pretoria, and a small little update on the South African ballet a little bit later in the show. But first, let's get the day's news from Katrina Miller.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrina Miller, and let's just take a look at those top stories this morning. 8 COSATU affiliates will hold a joint press briefing in Johannesburg this morning about the expulsion of NUMSA from the Labour Federation. They are expected to pledge their solidarity with the Metal Workers Union. The union was expelled by COSATU's Central Executive Committee on Saturday. NUMSA General Secretary Ivan Jim has vowed to fight the expulsion, saying the decision was orchestrated by key ANC and SACP leaders.
There is a project led by individuals who meet at night like thieves planning to do housebreaking. And what they are plotting at night is to liquidate NUMSA.
We have worked all throughout our lives, the two organizations, both the ANC and the Communist Party, to preserve unity and to build unity amongst workers. In fact, the Communist Party has pioneered the building of progressive trade union movement in the country.
The Nelson Mandela Bay region of the ANC Youth League has confirmed that it will write to its leadership and mother body to challenge the outcome of the provincial election Congress held in East London at the weekend. The conference degenerated into chaos as delegates could not agree on the credentials before the election of the new provincial leadership. Scores of injured people are reported to have been taken to hospital after violence broke out overnight. Regions such as Makana and the Nelson Mandela Metro were not part of the election process, and they left the venue after a fight broke out. Former SANDF Chief of Acquisitions during the 1999 arms deal, Shamin Chippy Sheikh, will appear before the Arms Procurement Commission in Pretoria today. The Suriti Commission has subpoenaed Sheikh to give evidence on alleged corruption. The so-called middleman Amonde Mbolombo will this morning continue his testimony under cross-examination in the trial of alleged murder mastermind Shreen Devani in the Western Cape High Court. The British businessman has pleaded not guilty and denied any involvement in the murder of his wife Annie. She was killed while honeymooning in Cape Town nearly 4 years ago. 11 police officials based at the Parow police station are due to appear in the Bellville Magistrates Court today on charges of bribery and corruption. 10 of them were arrested by members of the Western Cape Anti-Corruption Unit last Friday. The 11th was arrested later. The police members allegedly took bribes from suspects and stole exhibits. And an investigation is expected to get underway today into the plane crash that killed the leader of the Bahamas Faith Ministries, Dr. Miles Monroe, and his wife, Ruth. The small plane crashed on approach to the Bahamas, killing all 9 people on board. Dr. Monroe was an internationally known author, Bible teacher, governmental consultant, and leadership mentor. The small plane crashed after hitting a crane on approach to the island's international airport. Monroe visited South Africa a number of times. Well, remember, all those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Katrina. Story of the weekend, a war of words now between the leaders of trade union NUMSA and COSATU that looks set to continue this entire week. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa was expelled during a Central Executive Committee of the Trade Union Federation on Saturday. A joint press briefing by 8 COSATU affiliates is to be held this morning. The unions are expected to pledge their solidarity with NUMSA.
This expulsion?
More than 24 hours later, still spitting fire and unapologetic.
There is a project led by individuals who meet at night like thieves planning to do housebreaking. And what they are plotting at night is to liquidate NUMSA. Comrade Stumo himself.
Jim says the expulsion was well orchestrated by key alliance leaders. ANC Secretary-General Gwede Mantashe, SACP General Secretary Bladen Zimande, COSATU President Dumo Dlamini got a special mention, as well as NUM General Secretary Franz Baleni, who on Saturday pleaded with the Metal Workers Union to reverse its expulsion by apologizing.
So Franz Baleni is a hypocrite, to say the least. He has been one person who has been a ringleader of this project in the Federation.
Baleni says NUMSA has only itself to blame for its demise.
The approach of Ivan Jim is a typical factionalist approach, because factionalists are the ones which are individualizing things. The matters were debated, and COSATU as a collective came to a particular conclusion.
The SACP has dismissed involvement in the expulsion.
We have worked all throughout our lives, the two organizations, both the ANC and the Communist Party, to preserve unity and to build unity amongst workers.
And the fight between COSATU and its biggest affiliate is far from over. With the battle lines drawn, the Metal Workers Union will now take its battle to the shop floor, where it will engage with workers in a bid to keep them in the fold and also help fight the expulsion. While NUMSA says court action is not off the cards.
NUMSA structures gave us a mandate. And that mandate was very simple. We must do everything else to reclaim the Federation to its rightful owners, the workers.
It's also forging ahead to launch a united front in December. And NUMSA is not short of support. It met 8 like-minded affiliates at the weekend. They're expected to pledge solidarity on Monday. The ANC and COSATU declined to comment, indicating they will do so later in the week. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, in Johannesburg.
Interesting times in South Africa's labour movement. Now, in studio, we're joined today by our very own reporter, Yelisa Njamela, who's been on the journey since, well, on this journey with the story for the last couple of years, it feels like, Yelisa.
It does feel like a couple of years, in fact, but it's actually a combination of turmoil that has been happening since about February. It's about 9 months, really. But at last, if you like, there's some sort of results, because they'll be agitating towards some sort of expulsion or suspension. But now it's quite clear. The main agitators, NUMSA, has been expelled, as we know this. You know, in its 29-year history, COSATU has never experienced such turmoil that has led to the expulsion of one of the biggest affiliates. And you must know, at the core of the matter is what NUMSA decided on their Special National Congress last year in December. One of the major things being that they are going to go beyond the scope, the traditional scope, and going to recruit workers. Now, their explanation or their argument is that they're not alone in this. Other affiliates are doing this, and they make examples. For instance, the president of COSATU, Stumo Dlamini, is in fact a nurse, but he belongs to a union that is a state workers union, NEHAO. But there's DINOSA, that is supposedly only for nurses. But there are a lot of other issues around that matter. What's
your expectation from this morning, though? We'll see there'll be pledges of support and all kinds this morning when there's a special conference being called. What is your expectation from this morning, though? Well, it would seem that the 8 other affiliates are not ready to march with NUMSA. In other words, they're not ready to leave COSATU. What we're expecting today is how they're going to articulate their position in terms of how will they be trying to fight within. You must remember, Eben, that there's also the matter of Zwelinzima Vavi, who would seem now that his back is in the open. His staunch supporters, being NUMSA, are now gone. These other affiliates have not been such strong supporters of Vavi. So we have those matters today. We'd like also to hear from them what their position is in terms of how to move forward with the issue of the General Secretary, Zwelinzima Vavi. What went wrong as you read it? Is it as simplistic as saying personalities being put ahead of the principles of the workers? Or is this an untenable situation that can only improve if the personalities change within it?
Well, it would seem like, according first to the ANC task team report, you'll remember that the ANC intervened in the stalemate, and it was led by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. They're saying the two leaders are at the core of the friction. Stu Mudlamini being the president, Zwelinzima Mavavi being the general secretary. But other observers are saying this moves beyond this. It goes beyond them. It's ideological battles, and it's been going on for a long while. One of the analysts, in fact, this morning was saying to me that they warned about this a couple of years ago, that the tensions that are brewing within. You remember that we've also had in this country breakaways in the labor movement, and you've seen AMCU being much stronger in the minds as a result of breaking away from NUM. So it's more ideological, and removing the two leaders might not necessarily be the answer, because there's a lot more in this battle.
We're talking about the workers' agenda, really, and the workers not being served according to NUMSA. What are the risks and what needs to happen?
At this point, Eben, it would seem that nobody necessarily care about the worker. For instance, NUMSA's expulsion was purely by the leaders in the CEC. No one went to the 349,000 workers that belong to NUMSA and asked them and canvassed them. Even when NUMSA, that fateful Friday, or rather Saturday morning, early hours, when they presented their case to say, do not expel us, there were other unions, which include FAO, who said, let's go get a mandate. We believe that NUMSA must be expelled, but let's go get a mandate from the workers. What is their take? Perhaps, which came out as well from the ANC task team report, perhaps if you deal with the leadership of NUMSA, not the workers. But moving on from here, it would seem like the writing is on the wall. COSATU is really moving towards what some have been calling an absolute split.
Now, the NUMSA, in this case, they've been spoiling for a fight, and they've been angling the independents as collateral over the last year, really. What does the road ahead look like for them now?
Well, the United Front is definitely going to be launched this December. It would seem like they're likely going to go to court to fight this. Now, it's interesting in that while NUMSA says they want to be part of COSATU, they want to remain in the federation, everything else they're doing would seem like they do not want to be part of the federation. The Special National Congress being a pointer to that, because they also resolved not to support the ANC, which is the alliance leader, the tripartite alliance leader, during the elections in May. And that is obviously against the resolutions that have been taken by their mother body, which is COSATU, the federation. So as of now, we understand that they're going to try again to push to remain in the federation by going the route of the court. But we also know that they're going to go around the country trying to talk to their workers to see what they want moving forward.
And what do you see the situation now being for Zwelinzima Mavavi?
Well, it's interesting that Zwelinzima Mavavi has been mum, so to speak, from that day. And a lot of people were expecting him to either resign immediately or address the media. In fact, he said on that day that those early hours were just before, or rather just after NUMSA was expelled. He said he's going to speak to the media, and all journalists stood around at that time waiting for him. But then he decided, perhaps he was advised, he decided to leave and go home and not talk to the journalists. So I think that's one thing that we're watching very closely. What happens to him? A lot of other observers have been saying he's likely going to lead the United Front. So we don't know. We'll see what happens.
Interesting morning ahead of us. In the interesting couple of months, I can tell you, within the labour movement here in South Africa, sparks are flying, and the rhetoric can be expected to do the rounds this morning. Elisa, thank you for joining us and putting us in the picture, as you do.
Absolute pleasure.
That's our very own reporter, Elisa Njamela, who's been walking next to this split for the last year and a half, if you ask me. But time for us to also move on. The injured ANC Youth League delegates are reported to have been taken to hospital after violence broke out at an elective conference in the Eastern Cape last night. The conference degenerated into chaos after members disagreed on the credentials before the election of the new provincial leadership there.
What was meant to be a peaceful conference turned violent. Regions including Makana in the Nelson Mandela Metro were not part of the election process as they left the venue after a fight ensued.
As I was sitting with these guys that are next to me, we saw chairs flying. We were sitting in a corner close to an exit because we saw from the start that the situation is not right here.
It tells you very clear that someone is pushing that Susa Aba Abantu so that others they can proceed with the conference in the absence of others.
Those who were not part of the election process believe the provincial leadership should intervene.
What we are supposed to do is to make sure that you engage the process with the leadership of the ANC Youth League and that of the ANC National. We are going to write a letter of dispute and dispute the process.
A day earlier, ANC Provincial Chairperson and Premier Phumulo Masualle had warned delegates against ill discipline when he officially opened the conference.
On this conference, look at how we improve their systems so that the recurrence of this kind of delay doesn't take place again.
The top five include Nathi Ngoko as chairman, Zolani Kabane as his deputy, and Buchalali as the provincial secretary. Olutu Sota, SABC News in East London.
Interesting story. Well, to keep you, as that story develops, more details come out, we'll let you know throughout the rest of the day on this very channel. Let's take a quick look at your tweets. Well, at SABC Newsroom is where we've been collating them. That's where you should be sending them to. Your views are very important to us here at SABC News. Dumisani says, ANC post-Polokwane Cope breakaway, Youth League becomes irrelevant, Women's League becomes a desk, and NUMSA leaves Alliance. What's next? Oh, that's an interesting look at it. Jabulani Mabuza says, we need to read why Tambo, Mandela, Sisulu, and Lambert formed the Youth League to understand the role of the Youth League in the ANC. Very sober idea there. Jabulani says, I didn't even know the ANC Youth League was still a thing. It's been quiet, especially on matters which required their input, says Papa Action. Shaka Sisulu says spirits were undoubtedly high at our ANC Youth League Provincial Congress in Eastern Cape this weekend. We'll be issuing a statement regarding it later today, and we all look forward to that statement coming out from Mr. Shaka Sisulu, who sent that in to us to tell us what will be happening with violence that erupted at the electoral conference there. Let's take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. The Times in the United Kingdom reveals today that thousands of men with prostate cancer are missing out on the best treatment in the United Kingdom, according to a pioneering project that reveals worryingly vast variation in the availability of modern therapies. Then, across the pond in the United States, the Financial Times is looking at the commemoration of the Berlin Wall collapse. There, Angela Merkel places a flower in a remaining part of the wall. The International New York Times also has a picture of the Brandenburg Gate there that stood illuminated during celebrations on the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall last night. Now, the 25th anniversary of the collapse of the Berlin Wall has been celebrated. Thousands of helium balloons released in Berlin as a symbol of the fall of the Berlin Wall that led to the end of the Cold War as well. There you have some of the pictures playing. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961 to stop East Germans fleeing to the West. The opening of the wall on November the 9th, 1989 led to the reunification of Germany less than a year later. Now, if you want to see South Africa's part, real physical part that we own of the Berlin Wall, it's in St. George's Mall in Cape Town, for those of you that didn't know. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back after a short long break.
There's a lot of corruption there. What are you doing with that?
The word corruption is actually misplaced.
Any elements of corruption must be rooted out and punished accordingly.
SASCO is denying that there's any evidence of such.
We've heard the allegations about students not assisting the situation.
Why do you have to be pressurized to do your job, Mr. Msulu?
We spend everything that we get given by government.
It's an excuse.
Who's failing you at government?
Who's failing us at government?
Who's not heeding your call?
The government is the government.
Is Dr. Blade Nzimande doing well?
With what he has done, we want him to do more. We want him to deliver more.
So he's failing.
The Minister of Higher Education, don't put words in my mouth.
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Now, some days you just have to say what's on your mind. My family witnessed a horrific road rage attack close to our home this weekend. Blood-covered protagonists going at each other for the kill with an axe on a road that we travel to work on every day. It was a rude awakening for me, but then a sad realization also that this happens every day on our roads here in South Africa. Yes, our roads, seemingly a constant point in the national discourse, the funding of the e-toll system, laws, and the like, remains complicated and challenging. Last week, the South African Roads Agency, together with the Transport Department, made submissions to the e-tolling review panel in Pretoria last week. Now, joining us for our monthly road slot is Justice Project South Africa Chairman Howard Dembowski. Very good morning to you, Howard. Thank you for joining us once again.
Good morning to you, Eben, and good morning to all the viewers.
Howard, I know we've got some serious business to discuss, but let's start with this road rage attack. Seriously? Are you kidding me? With an axe on the highway that turned off right by my house. My wife drove past there, and the guy covered in blood, attacking the other guy. It's insane.
It most certainly is, and one has to ask what next. Are we going to have a chainsaw massacre on our roads? The fact is that people are very, very angry. They tend to take the law into their own hands and decide to punish people that they see as being delinquent road users, etc., etc. Whether that punishment comes in the form of raising a middle finger, or any finger for that matter, to another motorist, or taking out an axe and trying to hack them to death. The fact is that all of these things have catalysts. Those catalysts are generally somebody breaking a road traffic law to start with. The fact is that this degeneration has been going on now over a significant period of time, at least the last 10 years, in Johannesburg in particular. And the net result of this is that we have these kind of incidents because there is such a poor concentration on physical law enforcement. The JMPD has decided that its mandate is to make money by taking happy snaps of motorists speeding on freeways and in other areas, and it does very little other enforcement. In fact, the Road Traffic Infringement Agency's annual report, which came out recently, actually put out the fact that 92.8% of all of the JMPD's enforcement is camera enforcement by speed cameras, and the remaining 7.8% comes down to physical enforcement. That's just not good enough, and it's high time that citizens started demanding that our traffic authorities did their jobs that they're getting paid for, that they're mandated under the Constitution to fulfill, but they are just blindly ignoring in the pursuit of money.
What must we do about road rage as a nation? Because this latest attack has racial undertones to it. Even the paramedics didn't want to help the one person. Some claim racism and so forth. But it's not one race or the other that's to blame here. I've been abused on the roads by everybody, all races in South Africa. Now, I ask you, is it not time for us to put together structures so that we deal with this residual anger on the roads?
Well, yes, it's shocking, and yes, to default to playing the race card on this particular issue is somewhat sad, because it occurs, and we've seen instances where the people inflicting the violence on other people are of the same racial group. So it's got nothing really to do with race. It's got everything to do with pent-up anger, and that pent-up anger, as I said, originates, and I think we need to look at the root cause here. It originates at the root of the fact that people do not behave themselves on our roads, and they've got to this situation because they know that they're actually not going to be taken to task by law enforcement authorities. However, when our courts deal with such people, they need to deal with these people in a very harsh manner. And I would actually say that there's possibly a very good cause now to bring up a new category of offence, being road rage, so that we can put in minimum penalties and sentence people to jail, quite frankly, for this kind of behavior. It's completely unnecessary. No person has the right to beat up another person under any circumstances. But when it comes down to them doing it because they think that they are more important on our roads than anybody else, that's a problem, and we need to deal with it harshly.
Let's talk quickly about the e-tolls and your response to last week. Fuel levy debates continue. How do you view that?
Well, yeah, it was actually quite amusing, I suppose, because those of us in the know that the Gauteng e-tolls review panel has a very, very narrow mandate. Its mandate is to review the socio-economic impact of e-tolling on the province of Gauteng. Unfortunately, the Department of Transport, SANRAL and Treasury decided to club together and not even get their story straight, because they came up with all different figures between them. But they decided to get together and conflate this entire issue into an issue of maintaining and building roads in the entire country of South Africa. In so doing, they proposed that an extra fuel levy, it was first off, an extra fuel levy of R3.65 per litre be added, in which they would raise an additional 85 billion rand a year. Well, quite frankly, you can buy 3.5 Gauteng freeway improvement projects for that price. But they decided that the issue of e-tolling in Gauteng is not important. Let's talk about South Africa. The fact is that they came up with all different stories contradicting one another. First off, the Minister of Transport said between R3.17 and R3.65. Then Tiani Rakotsa, the spokesperson for the Department of Transport, said no, it's actually R1.15, or sorry, R1.55. Then the next day, the CEO of SANRAL said he'd be very happy to take R3.69 per litre. The question is, why didn't these people just get together and decide on which lie that they were going to perpetrate? But the fact is that this entire story has been conflated. Firstly, all of the civic organizations, the political parties, members of the public, etc., were given a maximum of 2 hours to make their case. SANRAL and the Department of Transport were given 3 days to do so. And that seems a little bit inequitable. And, you know, judging by the way that they conflated things and all the nonsense that they brought to the table, it's hardly surprising that they needed 3 days to do it.
Howard, I want you to talk about the act, but I also just want to say that SANRAL, they blamed the media last week for the inaccurate reporting, they say, and that this fed misperceptions about the e-toll system to the public. We've tried to get SANRAL on the show many times. Unfortunately, they've always declined the invitation. Let's talk about, you wanted to talk about the Act?
Yeah. Look, very quickly on that score, it's quite sad that they've blamed the media, given the fact that I actually have a recording and watched Mr. Mawetu Vilana, the Acting Director General for Transport, in a TV interview talking about an extra R3.17 and an extra R3.65 per litre. So it's sad that they decided to make those kind of allegations. And let's just remember that all of those panel discussions are actually available on YouTube if you have 18 hours to sit and watch them. In any case, the Act, the National Road Traffic Act, I don't know if you remember, but last month was Transport Month. And just in time for the close of Transport Month on the 31st of October, the Department of Transport, the Minister of Transport, published a set of new regulations amendments which are going to bring in a whole lot of new regulations and a whole lot of amendments. Firstly, as from the 31st of October, you are now required to in effect, RICA yourself when making an e-Natus transaction. In other words, processing a licensing transaction, etc. You need to take your proof of residence with you. So I'd like everyone to be aware of that. The other thing that I'd like them to be aware of is, as of the 31st of October, it is now compulsory for all infants under the age of 3 years to be contained in a child restraint whilst travelling in a motor vehicle that is not a minibus, taxi or a bus. This is very important, and I'll tell you why it's important, because this provision has never actually existed before. Child restraints have been optional. This particular legislation makes it compulsory for infants to be in child restraints, not for children, unfortunately, but for infants. And the other unfortunate thing is no grace period has been allowed or anything like that for people to comply.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Howard Domboski is the chairperson of the Justice Project South Africa, giving us our monthly update on what's going on South Africa's roads. At the moment, the picture's not looking too good. We're killing each other. We had a shooting last week before. A guy was shot 6 times during a road rage accident. This weekend, kilometre from our house, they hit a guy in the head with an axe 3 times. Don't know what's going on. But let's take a look at what you're saying about this, or what people have been saying about this on social media, because I'm certainly not there. Of course, we had the Shambok accident. King says, before you leave home for the open road, make sure you load your Shambok axe. Depending on province, the only recognized road rage weapons of choice. Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a giggle about that. Shure Gamunga says, road rage victim hit with an axe, allegedly ignored by Netcare paramedics who assisted the attacker. They said they feared for their safety. From the Star, well, that's not how you do it, Netcare paramedics. You have to help everybody. Dramaland says, Fadlin, impatience mixed in with road rage? No, I think impatience causes road rage as part of it. Those are all the tweets that we've had. Well, those are your road rage tweets. Interesting there that the paramedics are being accused of not wanting to help the victim in this case, and instead help the attacker. I think they're both attackers in this case, to be honest. Let's have a look at what's happening on our Newsroom Facebook page now. Today you will see there that award awards between leaders of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa and the Congress of South African Trade Unions looks set to continue. This afternoon says expulsion from Kasati. You'll also see that the so-called middleman, Mondi Mbolombo of the Srindavani trial, will continue his testimony under cross-examination today, and that Pastor Miles Monroe, founder of the Bahamas Faith Ministries, and his wife, Ruth, have tragically died in a plane crash in the Bahamas. You can find all those stories and a whole lot more on Newsroom's Facebook page. Also, sabc.co.za/news. That's where you can find all the latest updates all the time. There, it's on your screen right now. Time for us now to take a short little break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Have fun. You too.
Groeimerk is een kapst. Ja, de park is er. Kom.
Hello and welcome back here with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the top stories this morning. 8 COSATU affiliates will hold a joint press briefing in Johannesburg this morning about the expulsion of NUMSA from the Labour Federation. They are expected to pledge their solidarity with the Metal Workers Union. The union was expelled by COSATU's Central Executive Committee on Saturday. NUMSA General Secretary Ivan Jim has vowed to fight the expulsion, saying the decision was orchestrated by key ANC and SACP leaders. The Nelson Mandela Bay region of the ANC Youth League has confirmed that it will write to its leadership and the mother body to challenge the outcome of the provincial elective congress held in East London at the weekend. The conference degenerated into chaos as delegates could not agree on the credentials before the election of the new provincial leadership. Scores of injured people are reported to have been taken to hospital after violence broke out overnight. Regions such as Makana and the Nelson Mandela Metro were not part of the election process as they left the venue after a fight broke out. And former SANDF Chief of Acquisitions during the 1999 arms deal, Shamin Sheikh, will appear before the Arms Procurement Commission in Pretoria today. The Security Commission has subpoenaed Sheikh to give evidence on alleged corruption. As always, all those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you once again, Katrine. Now, top story in the headlines this morning. Former SANDF Chief of Acquisitions during the 1999 arms deal, Shamin Sheikh, will appear before the Arms Procurement Commission in Pretoria today. The Security Commission has subpoenaed Sheikh to give evidence on alleged corruption. Now, joining us live from the proceedings in Pretoria is Njanji Chake. A very good morning to you, Njanji. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thanks for joining us here at St. Mark's Square. All I can say is that the Security Commission of Inquiry is gaining momentum, especially with today's appearance of the former Chief of Acquisitions at Defense, Mr. Shamin Sheikh. I saw him a short while ago. He was busy with consultation with the evidence leaders. I just saw him taking a quick dash outside, busy on his mobile phone. So it will be interesting to hear what he'll be saying today, Eben.
Why is Sheikh so crucial to the Arms Deal Commission investigation, Njanji?
You'll recall that besides having been the Chief of Acquisitions at Defense at the time when the arms deal was negotiated and clinched, he's been implicated by a number of witnesses, also investigations that were done abroad as well as locally. His name has been mentioned. He's been accused of flouting certain rules or what we can say we can call procurement policies. This relates to the acquisitions of the fighter Hawk jets. Many of the critics saying that there was no need really to acquire the Hawks as well as the Gripens. You will remember that the Hawks, some of the equipment is being used to train some of the pilots before they can qualify to fly those Gripens. So it will be interesting as to hear what type of testimony will Chippy Sheikh be delivering here at the Arms Procurement Commission.
Another man that's expected to make an appearance, hopefully sometime this week, is Fana Hlongwane. Has Mr. Hlongwane appeared, and do we expect him to take to the stand later this week?
Yes, we're expecting him to come through and testify here quite soon. All I can say is that both Chippy Sheikh and Fana Hlongwane are the key witnesses here after those, the evidence by the whistleblowers such as Terry Crawford Brown. You'll recall there was a lot of drama a few months ago when those arms deal critics chose to withdraw from the proceedings. So the two key witnesses left really is Chippy Sheikh as well as Fana Hlongwane. But we also know that one of the losing arms deal bidders, Dr. Andrew Young from Cape Town, he's also one of the interested parties that were also expecting to still come through and testify as one of the losing bidders. He's also alleged a lot of corruption having taken place in that 1999 arms deal.
Finally, and Janji, before I let you go, the life of the commission has been extended. Why and by how long?
All we know is that it's likely to go on until next year, April. You'll recall that they were supposed to be wrapping up the hearings and make that recommendation to President Jacob Zuma this month of November, actually from tomorrow, around the 11th. They were expected to be able to be done with their work and to submit that report with recommendations to the President. They did mention a few months ago that it looks like they will have to apply for an extension. We know that they were dogged by a number of delays, some of the key witnesses requesting certain documents. Some of the documents earlier were classified, that creating a lot of delays and problems for the Commission. Hence, these delays that have now led to the Commission's term being extended up to April next year.
Thank you very much, Angie Chake, at this Ariti Commission of Inquiry, giving us a little update as to, well, top story today. Chippy Sheikh will be taking the stand. Should be interesting. Should be good testimony. Finally, South Africa takes center stage in the People's Republic of China this November when Joburg Ballet tours a showcase of the best classical and contemporary dance as part of the China-South Africa Year ceremonies. Katrine Milan has more.
Joburg Ballet's visit to China in November and December celebrates the company's growing stature as a major South African arts institution, acknowledging Joburg Ballet's expanding role nationally and internationally. Joburg Ballet's international travel has amplified the company's global footprint, with dancers currently performing in Denmark, Ireland, Cuba, and soon China, cementing Joburg Ballet's place as a world-class African ballet company. Well, today we are joined by ballet entrepreneur Dirk Badenhof to tell us all about this and more. Welcome to Newsroom again, Dirk.
Thank you very much.
Dirk, before we get to China, I understand you guys have recently returned from Cuba and Mexico as well. Just tell us a bit more about that.
So for years I've been working with Cuba, as everybody knows, and so this is the first year where 3 of the dancers from Joburg Ballet actually performed at the 24th International Ballet Festival in Havana. And it was incredible to see how the world, because it's dancers from truly around the world that perform in China, from Hong Kong to America to China to the Cubans, etc. And they were completely amazed by the level of ballet that we had performed there. And we took 3 pieces, a very classical Romeo and Juliet, South African choreographed Ian MacDonald's Cinderella, to showcase that we have great choreographers, and then a South African piece with African drumming, but still classical ballet called Kopano. And that really was to showcase how we are developing in South Africa and how our training is becoming indeed world-class by infusing our own South African style with styles from Cuba and hopefully soon China as well.
Well, you guys are heading to China now. Can you tell us clarify a bit more who will be going and what will we be seeing and the whole aim? And
as mentioned, this is the South Africa and China year, and during my visit in July in China, I had asked whether we could be included in the program, and for the first time ever, ballet has been included in a South African program in China. And then I was more cheeky and asked if Kitty Petla's Carmina Burana could be performed with the Central Ballet of China. So that's never been done before either. And so we will be performing in 3 major cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and the capital of the Liaoning province. And we do a program mixed with classical pas de deux and Carmina Burana and Copano. The one beautiful song, Hao Teng, is being performed. It's really, really great. But then on the closing ceremony on the 4th or 5th of December, the South African president and the Chinese president will be present as well, and that's where we will be performing with the Central Ballet of China, Kitty Petla's Carmina Burana. So that is really an incredible place for us to be. And the idea is that we will be reciprocating this visit to China with visits from 2 companies next year. And the first will be the Liaoning Ballet will come and perform with us in South Africa in our production of Swan Lake, which will boost the numbers of our production to be able to do the full Swan Lake that we haven't seen for very long in South Africa.
A world-class African ballet company. Many people underestimate what that actually means, not only to the arts, but also to brand South Africa and Africa as a whole. Do you agree?
Absolutely. We have become like any big company in the world, New York City Ballet, American Ballet Theatre, San Francisco Ballet, Royal Ballet. So we have South Africans, which make the bulk of our company, but we have Cubans and we have Irish and we have Chinese in the company, and it's really bolstered the level of the dancing in South Africa. But ultimately, we're a South African company, and wherever we go, whether it was now in Cuba, whether the dancers are dancing in Denmark, Ireland, now in China, it's so great for the world to see what it is that we put on stage, but to start having a completely different opinion of South Africa because of classical ballet. However, what makes our company the beautiful company that it is that it's not a homogeneous company like you would see in China or Paris or any of the European countries, but it really celebrates South Africa. Our demographics are reflected in our company, and that makes it so much more appealing to so many people because suddenly a greater variety of audience can find it appealing. And so they can sit in the audience and identify with the dancer on stage. And so whether you're in South Africa or in China or in America performing as a Joburg ballet dancer, it now tells the story of South Africa and the whole of Africa being a country that allows, a continent that allows inclusivity and strives for excellence.
Well, Dirk, thank you so much for joining us, and truly a remarkable story. One that you can follow on Facebook. I know Joburg Ballet has a beautiful Facebook page with beautiful pictures.
Absolutely.
And you can keep up with their world travels. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Newsroom. Well, Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrin. Wonderful pictures. I love some of those ballet pictures. Maybe you can send us some pictures on Twitter. Before we go, let's take a look what you're talking about this morning. What are we twittering on about? Bankole Adebayo says the leader of Bahamas Faith Ministries, Dr. Miles Monroe, and his wife Ruth were killed in a plane crash at 5 p.m. local time on Sunday. Yes, a frequent visitor to South Africa, Dr. Miles Monroe. Condolences to the Miles Monroe's family, says Sela. Torben Ngobo says, I just remember the sermon he gave at Life Bible Church International a few weeks ago. For 4 hours, I sat and understood the kingdom. Hashtag Monroe. Diolo says, RIP Dr. Miles Monroe, I pray that your family will be able to bear the loss. It is well. I'm Tabocho says, remember these words from hashtag Monroe. The greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life without a purpose. I could agree with you. And there you have the picture of the late Faith Ministries leader, Dr. Miles Monroe, and his wife, Ruth, who died tragically in a plane crash yesterday. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, between 9 and 10 a.m. every weekday morning. We're also live on YouTube at that time, with the entire show available on demand a little bit later on our YouTube channel, if that is what you like. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.